This reading is Travels with the Snow Queen, Part 3, a short story in the collection Stranger Things Happen by Kelly Link. The Princess Briar Rose isn't a bimbo after all, even if she does have a silly name and a pink castle. You admire her dedication to the art and practice of sleep. By now, you are growing sick and tired of traveling, and would like nothing better than to curl up in a big feather bed for 100 days or maybe even 100 years. But she offers to loan you her carriage, and when you explain that you have to walk, she sends you off with a troop of armed guards. They will escort you through the forest, which is full of thieves and wolves and princes on quests lurking about. The guards politely pretend that they don't notice the trail of blood that you are leaving behind. They probably think it's some sort of female thing. It is after sunset, and you aren't even half a mile into the forest, which is dark and scary and full of noises, when bandits ambush your escort and slaughter them all. The bandit queen, who is grizzled and gray, with a nose like an old pickle, yells delightedly at the sight of you. "You're a nice plump one for my supper," she says, and draws her long knife out of the stomach of one of the dead guards. She is just about to slit your throat, as you stand there politely pretending not to notice the blood that is pooling around the bodies of the dead guards, that is now obliterating the bloody tracks of your feet, the knife that is at your throat, when a girl about your own age jumps onto the robber queen's back, pulling at the robber queen's braided hair as if it were reins. There is a certain family resemblance between the robber queen and the girl who right now has her knees locked around the robber queen's throat. "I don't want you to kill her," the girl says, and you realize that she means you, that you were about to die a minute ago, that travel is much more dangerous than you had ever imagined. You add an item of complaint to the list of things that you plan to tell Kay, if you find him. The girl has half-throttled the robber queen, who has fallen to her knees gasping for breath. "She can be my sister," the girl says, insistently. "You promised I could have a sister, and I want her. Besides, her feet are bleeding." The robber queen drops her knife, and the girl drops back onto the ground, kissing her mother's hairy gray cheek. Very well, the robber queen grumbles, and the girl grabs your hand, pulling you farther and faster into the woods until you are running and stumbling, her hand hot around yours. You have lost all sense of direction. Your feet are no longer set upon your map. You should be afraid, but instead you are strangely exhilarated. Your feet don't hurt anymore, and although you don't know where you are going, for the very first time you are moving fast enough. You are almost flying. Your feet are skimming over the night-black forest floor as if it were the smooth, flat surface of a lake, and your feet were two white birds. "Where are we going?" you ask the robber girl. "We're here," she says, and stops so suddenly that you almost fall over. You are in a clearing, and the full moon is hanging overhead. You can see the robber girl better now, under the light of the moon. She looks like one of the bad girls who loiter under the street lamp by the corner shop, the ones who used to whistle at Kay. She wears black leatherette boots laced up to her thighs, and a black ribbed t-shirt and grape-colored plastic shorts with matching suspenders. Her nails are painted black and bitten down to the quick. She leads you to a tumble-down stone keep, which has as black inside as her fingernail polish and smells strongly of dirty straw and animals. "Are you a princess?" she asks you. "What are you doing in my mother's forest? Don't be afraid. I won't let my mother eat you." You explain to her that you are not a princess, what you are doing, about the map, who you are looking for, what he did to you, or maybe it was what he didn't do. When you finish, the robber girl puts her arms around you and squeezes you roughly. "You poor thing. But what a silly way to travel," she says. She shakes her head and makes you sit down on the stone floor of the keep and show you her feet. You explain that they always heal, that really your feet are quite tough, but she takes off her leatherette boots and gives them to you. The floor of the keep is dotted with indistinct, motionless forms. One snarls in its sleep, and you realize that they are dogs. The robber girl is sitting between 4 slender columns, and when the dog snarls, the thing shifts restlessly, lowering its branchy head. It is a hobbled reindeer. Well, go on. See if they fit, the robber girl says, pulling out her knife. She drags it along the stone floor to make sparks. What are you going to do when you find him? Sometimes I'd like to cut off his head, you say. The robber girl grins and thumps the hilt of her knife against the reindeer's chest. The robber girl's feet are just a little bigger, but the boots are still warm from her feet. You explain that you can't wear the boots, or else you won't know where you are going. Nonsense, the robber girl says rudely. You ask if she knows a better way to find Kay, and she says that if you are still determined to go looking for him, even though he obviously doesn't love you, and he isn't worth a bit of trouble, then the thing to do is to find the Snow Queen. This is Bay. Bay, you mangy old useless thing, she says. Do you know where the Snow Queen lives? The reindeer replies in a low, hopeless voice that he doesn't know, but he is sure that his old mother does. The robber girl slaps his flank. Then you'll take her to your mother, she says, and mind that you don't dawdle on the way. She turns to you and gives you a smacking wet kiss on the lips and says, keep the shoes, they look much nicer on you than they did on me, and don't let me hear that you've been walking on glass again. She gives the reindeer a speculative look. You know, Bay, I almost think I'm going to miss you. You step into the cradle of her hands, and she swings you over the reindeer's bony back. Then she saws through the hobble with her knife and yells, "Ho!" waking up the dogs. You knot your fingers into Bay's mane and bounce up as he stumbles into a fast trot. The dogs follow for a distance, snapping at his hooves, but soon you have outdistanced them, moving so fast that the wind peels your lips back in an involuntary grimace. You almost miss the feel of glass beneath your feet. By morning, you are out of the forest again, and Bay's hooves are churning up white clouds of snow. Sometimes you think there must be an easier way to do this. Sometimes it seems to be getting easier all on its own. Now you have boots and a reindeer, but you still aren't happy. Sometimes you wish that you'd stayed at home. You're sick and tired of traveling towards the happily ever after, whenever the fuck that is. You'd like to be happily right now. Thank you very much. When you breathe out, you can see the fine mist of your breath, and the breath of the reindeer floating before you until the wind tears it away. Bay runs on. The snow flies up, and the air seems to grow thicker and thicker. As Bay runs, you feel that the white air is being rent by your passage like heavy cloth. When you turn around and look behind you, you can see the path shaped to your joined form, woman and reindeer, like a hall stretching back to infinity. You see that there is more than one sort of map, that some forms of travel are indeed easier. Give me a kiss, Bay says. The wind whips his words back to you. You can almost see the shape of them hanging in the heavy air. I'm not really a reindeer, he says. I'm an enchanted prince. You politely decline, pointing out that you haven't known him that long, and besides, for traveling purposes, a reindeer is better than a prince. He doesn't love you, Bay says, and you could stand to lose a few pounds. My back is killing me. You are sick and tired of talking animals, as well as travel. They never say anything that you didn't know already. You think of the talking cat that Kay gave you, the one that would always come to you secretly and looking very pleased with itself to inform you when Kay's fingers smelled of some other woman. You couldn't stand to see him pet it, his fingers stroking its white fur, the cat lying on its side and purring wildly. There, darling, that's perfect. Don't stop. His fingers on its belly, its tail wreathing and lashing, its pointy little tongue sticking out at you. Shut up, you say to Bay. He subsides into an offended silence. His long brown fur is rimmed with frost, and you can feel the tears that the wind pulls from your eyes turning to ice on your cheeks. The only part of you that is warm are your feet, snug in the rubber girl's boots. It's just a little farther, Bay says, when you have been traveling for what feels like hours, and then we're home. You cross another corridor in the white air, and he swerves to follow it, crying out gladly, "We are near the old woman of Lapmark's house, my mother's house." "How do you know?" you ask. "I recognize the shape that she leaves behind her," Bay says. "Look." You look and see that the corridor of air you are following is formed like a short, stout, petticoated woman. It swings out at the waist like a bell. "How long does it last?" "As long as the air is heavy and dense," he says. "We burrow tunnels through the air like worms, but then the wind will come along and erase where we've been." The woman tunnel ends at a low red door. Bay lowers his head and knocks his antlers against it, scraping off the paint. The old woman of Lapmark opens the door, and you clamber stiffly off Bay's back. There is much rejoicing, as mother recognizes son, although he is much changed from how he had been. The old woman of Lapmark is stooped and fat as a grub. She fixes you a cup of tea, while Bay explains that you are looking for the Snow Queen's place. "You've not far to go now," his mother tells you, "only a few 100 miles, and past the house of the woman of Finmany. She'll tell you how to go. Let me write a letter explaining everything to her. And don't forget to mention to her that I'll be coming for tea tomorrow. She'll change you back then, Bay, if you ask her nicely." The woman of Lapmark has no paper, so she writes the letter on a piece of dried cod, flat as a dinner plate. Then you are off again. Sometimes you sleep as Bay runs on, and sometimes you aren't sure if you're asleep or waking. Great balls of greenish light roll cracking across the sky above you. At times it seems as if Bay is flying alongside the lights, chatting to them like old friends. At last you come to the house of the woman of Finmany, and you knock on her chimney, because she has no door.